Gucci House.
Grand Rising.
Welcome, everyone. Everyone, we are live today. Today is Tuesday. Yeah, it is. This question is a very beautiful question. Do you change your belief or do you adopt a new one? Well, that depends on your perception. If you think it is harder to change, then it will be harder to change. So then adopt a new belief. Let's dig at it a little bit, shall we? We have this false perception that one, there's something wrong with us that we need to fix, and two, the change is so difficult. We can't teach an old dog new tricks. That is not the case. We are always changing. We're always moving from where we are to where we're going. Always the expansion. So perhaps changing the perception from, oh my God, I have to change this. No, no. Don't fret about changing. You see, whenever you read the lectures from Neville Goddard and he tells you about people and he says this is what he told them to do. And he told them to imagine themselves being better. I know he alluded to the lady who was the designer. Whenever she walked to work, she'd be cussing out her boss. And so her boss didn't like her, right? But he told her, look, you're already having a conversation. So if I were you, I would have this type of conversation. Have a conversation where you can hear him praising your work, giving you accolades. Now, it said in the lecture that she did this for a few weeks. I don't know if it was 1, 2, because I don't remember it saying days. But she did it over and over and over. She had that conversation in her mind's eye as she was walking to work every day. And it changed. The other one would be where the man was driving by this particular office and that's where he wanted to work. And so he said to Neville, he was at one of Neville's lectures and he remembered Neville saying, well, put yourself in that position. So he went in and he looked at the office and he saw that it was his. He saw himself in it. He saw himself sitting behind the desk, not as a video on a screen, but he saw himself because he was actually the one doing it. You see, then there was the little boy. His mother didn't have anybody to leave him with. So she brought him to the meeting with Neville. And then they were ready to go. He said to Neville, he says, well, I know how to get my dog now. And his mother gave him logical reason after logical reason why he could not. But he insisted. He said, no, I know how to pray now, so I can have my dog. There was also the little girl, Linda. Pretty sure her name was Linda. Her father would remind her. So her mother said, no, you cannot. And she said, but Daddy. And he said, did you forget how to pray? So then she saw in her mind's eye and she did it there. And then her mother changed her mind. And this happened at least 3 or 4 times. Why am I telling you this? Because at no point in these lectures did he say that these people had to change who they were. They didn't have to fix themselves. What they did change, though, was their inner conversation. That's what they changed, their inner conversation. Now, perhaps they had less stimulation than we do in this day and age. They didn't have TikTok and Facebook and fan base and Twitter. They didn't have all those things. And YouTube, they didn't have those things to distract them. Shoot, they didn't really have color TV. But what they did have was a desire to test themselves. So, does one need to change, or do we just adopt the thing? You say, this is what I want to be. Well, then be it. Don't worry about all the other things. That's where we get caught up. That's where we get stuck in the brambles and the bushes. When we give ourselves all of the excuses as to why we cannot obtain what it is, because, oh my God, my inner child is so traumatized. Oh my God, this is happening to me over and over again. Oh my God, like that's where we get stuck. But what if we just embraced the new conversation? Last night's lecture made it very clear. He said, what do you want to be? Well, then, pardon me, what's the first thing you would do if you were it? What's the first thing you would say? Who's the first person you would tell if you were it? If you were the man or the woman you wanted to be? How would your friends see you? How would they speak to and about you? He said, see that in your mind's eye. But most importantly, it makes you feel a particular way. The feeling that you get is the confirmation as to what you've just changed about your inner conversation. The feeling that you get when you see your friends go, oh my God, congratulations. See that? The fact of seeing their attitude change towards you. Their faces change when you look at them in your mind's eye. It does something to you. And when you feel it, it will either confirm or contradict what you say you want to be. If it contradicts, well, then it means you've got your mind somewhere else. You're worried about something else. You're feeling doubtful. But if it confirms, you get a feeling of knowing, a feeling of peacefulness, a feeling of, whew, I told you so. I knew this was it. You see, when we hear feeling is the secret, we want to think he's talking about happy and joyful and grateful. Yes, yes. But there's another component. Because you have that feeling of confirmation, what are you confirming? You're confirming what you know. So the feeling is the evidence of what you know. That's why he says feeling is the secret. You and I live by way of our feelings. And the feeling is the confirmation of what we say that we know. So if you walk around with the feeling of insecurity and inferiority, well, then what do you know? You know that you're not as good as everybody else. That's what the feeling is telling you. The feeling is the effect. So, do you have to change you, or do you just simply have to change that inner conversation? And when you change that inner conversation, the longer you have that inner conversation, you will either confirm or contradict. So what do you want to do? Here's the thing. We think we have to change. And it's not necessary. We learned how to do a lot of things. We have all these things we say to ourselves on a daily basis. We do. We say so many things to ourselves. But that's where the change is happening, with what we say to ourselves, not your personality, what you're saying to yourself. But we want to go about it from the outside. So that's why this question is, do I change, or do I just adopt a new conversation? Adopt a new conversation, because then the change is the byproduct. Remember how life happens. Remember the process. As within, so without. As within, so without. Life emerges from within. So when you speak to yourself on a daily basis, do you even know what you're saying to yourself? That's okay. We have a class coming up. We have a class coming up with a very critical exercise. Not because of any major reason, but this one. Everybody learns differently. Some people need to see the evidence, right? Some people need to grasp. I've had people say to me, Angela, I would never do that to myself. And I say, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do it consciously, but unconsciously, you sure are. And they say, what do you mean unconsciously? What do you mean unconsciously? Come to the class and we'll sort that bad boy out. Because we struggle far too long. Myself included. Don't think that I'm telling you something from way up here on the mountain. Shoot, I'm in the valley too. Right? But the thing is, what is that conversation that you are incessantly having with yourself? You don't even know. And that's what we want to shift: the inner conversation. The inner conversation. Because that is where you're living your life from. So do you change, or do you just adopt a new conversation? Adopt a new conversation. Because if I say to you, change, what's the first thing we hear? Oh my God, it's so hard to change. But if I say to you, man, just get a new conversation. One of those things appears to be easier than the other. But I want you to know that they are both the same. It's just our perception of them. We approach change as if it were this mountain, Mount Everest, Kilimanjaro. We approach change as if it is this thing that is so far beyond us. When in actuality, everything moves. This is the law of vibration. Everything moves. Nothing remains still. So what is change? Change is movement. Movement from where you presently are to where you're going. Everything moves, and it moves in the fashion of ebb and flow. Always a forward, so an outward, and then a pull back, an outward and a pull back. So it always thrusts itself forward and then it comes back. It thrusts itself forward and it comes back. But it doesn't go backwards in the sense that it is retreating. No, it is not a retreat. It is always an advance. Look at the tide. Look at when you go to the beach and you feel the undulation of the wave. The wave pulls back, but it comes forward. It comes back, but it goes forward. And if you watch and you pay attention, the distance that the wave pulls back and goes forward is dependent upon what? The ebb and the flow. Where are you in the cycle of high tide and low tide? So don't think that you and I are moving in a random fashion. We're not moving randomly. We are always moving towards the fulfillment of our desire. We are moving towards the fulfilled desire. It is already fulfilled because it's quite like the moon. It pulls you. Yes? Your desire pulls you because it entices you and you go forward towards it. And then you come back. The level of your intensity about your desire determines the rate at which you move towards it. You see? So give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Look at the intensity of your frustration because you feel you can't accomplish it. So, how do you think you're moving now? You're moving according to your frustration. You're not moving according to your desire. You're moving according to your frustration. You see, your frustration is a mood. So, do you need to change? Or do you not just need to adopt a new inner conversation? Change your perspective. The perspective. Change what you say to yourself, what you're looking at, what you're listening to. Change that, and everything else will change to accommodate it. So it's not that you have to change yourself. The self does not change. The self remains the same. It just changes what it is aware of. It sees things. Oh, look, there's a rose. Oh, look, there's a tulip. But the self, what is the self? Daddy always says that, man, know thyself. But what is the self? We think it is, oh, look, George. Oh, look, Lucy. No. Self is, I'm aware that I exist. How are you going to change that? You can never change the fact that of knowing that you are. You always are because you always were. So that's not what needs to change. The self doesn't need to change. The perspective of what you're looking at. What is the self looking at? What does the self say it is? Remember the scripture. Who does the world say that I am? Oh, but they say you're John the Baptist. Come again. They say you are Elijah. They say you're one of the great prophets returned. And Jesus said to the disciples, well, that's fine and good. But who do you say that I am? So who is it that you are saying you are? Listen to the inner conversation and you will hear every time you say, oh, I am so, I am. That's who you're saying the self is. So it's not the self that changes. The self remains the same. It just moves from one mood to another. It adopts a new mood. That's all it's doing. So it's not that what you've gone through in your life is somehow bad, good, or indifferent. Perhaps change your perspective of that. It was only a shirt or a suit that yourself put on. And if you put it on, you can take it off. If you put it on, you can take it off. It is only because we have brains. And brains are designed to hold information and to remember. So, because we can remember, we think that that's what we are. So it's not that you have to change the self, the inner conversation and what you are telling the self to become. You and I are the ones that condition the self. I don't know if you guys ever did this in school, but when I was a youngin' in school, we learned how to do tie dye. Tie dye. You tie the shirt in different places, really, really tight, and then you dip it into different colors. We learned how to do that. That's what you're doing to the self, molding it and shaping it into something. It is most pliable. It is most pliable. It is most flexible. You can mold it and shape it into anything. Key word is you can mold it and shape it into anything. So you see, you are never stuck where you are. Ever. So do you change or do you adopt a new way? Adopt the new way. You see, when we say change, we look at the old thing and we complain and we say, oh, I can't. Oh, I don't know. That's what we say. Because we think change is this thing that somehow is so big we can't cross it or climb it. But that's not the case. You and I are always molding and shaping ourselves. From what? From where we are right now. And you know what we're doing? It's that inner conversation that you are whispering to yourself moment by moment. And when we say the word change, we think we have to look at the old way and fight against it. When in actuality, simply turn your attention towards the new and embrace or adopt it. Because scientists are now telling you where you put your attention, that's where you're giving life to. Did you need a scientist to tell you that, or did you just look at that African violet you forgot about on the windowsill? Did you look at it and go, oh no, look at the dirt, it's so dry? You forgot to pay it any attention. So what did you do? You go out and you get the nice African violet food and you feed it and you spritz it. And then what happens? Oh, it springs to life again. Why did it spring to life? Because you turned your attention towards it. So if you turn your attention towards what it is you want to experience, instead of turning your attention towards what makes you unhappy, what do you think you're doing? Just think about that for a moment. If you forget to water the garden, you did not give it any attention. Thereby, you take the life away from it because you have not given it any attention. But the moment you go out there and you give it your attention, what do? You bring it to life. So, is the scientist correct because he did the research? Or are you correct because you observed your actions? So, today, remember this. Don't look at the thing you're trying to change about yourself. Don't look at that. You keep it alive. Turn your attention towards the new thing you want to become. There's a story in the Bible about that. Jacob. He was working for Laban because he was in love with Rachel. Now remember, Rachel Rachel is not Rachel because she's a woman. Rachel represents, listen to it, she was beautiful in form and face. You know what that means? She was banging. Her body was fly. She was beautiful, big eyes and full lips. Anyway, Jacob looked at her and said, oh, well, hey, gorgeous, I gotta have you. What do you think your desire symbolizes? The desire is the thing that you are attracted to and the thing that you want. So here's what happened in the story. Remember, the story is psychological. But in order to make it more interesting, if I told you it was psychological and didn't tell you that, Rachel was lovely, you probably wouldn't get it and it wouldn't be fun. So that's why you have to tell the story the way you tell the story. Anywho, Laban says, listen, I'm going to give you all the sickly and spotted animals to build your flock with. That's what I'll do for you. And Jacob was like, oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to show you. I got mad skills. I ain't no fool. I'm going to show you what I can do. So he didn't tell Laban anything. Remember, Laban told him he could have all the spotted, because to Laban, the spotted were somehow inferior and weaker. So Jacob, he put the sheep in front of spots so that every time they were eating or mating, they would see spots. So what would they recreate? Spots. But don't get it twisted. He did not breed the weak and the sickly. He bred the strong in front of the spots. Why? Because you become what you behold. You become what you're looking at. That's what that story is telling you. So if you're looking at the complaining, what are you reproducing? More complaints. So you got to be smart. You've got to be intelligent here. What do you want to recreate? That's what you give your attention to. Just like the sheep. And you see, listen to the story. They were feeding at the trough, but they weren't feeding with their eyes closed. They were feeding with their eyes wide open. And because the spots were there, they didn't even necessarily know they were looking at spots because they're sheep. What does that tell you? It tells you that we have the ability to take in information unconsciously. But they were eating. They were only paying attention to what they were eating. But because the spotted things that he carved the little spots into the bark of the tree that they were tethered to where the troughs were, and because they were eating and seeing the spots, the things that we see unconsciously, right? If you don't, I'm going to say it to you this way. It may have been unconscious for the livestock to see what was happening, but look at where it was deliberate. So deliberately choose what you will look at. So the sheep represent the mind, the brain that will just follow and take in what you give it, aka the subconscious mind. That's what it represents. But who had to make that decision for what they would see? Jacob. So who's Jacob? You, the one with the capacity to make the decision. So you know that we take in things unconsciously. So consciously decide what you will unconsciously take in. Example, I love me. Money comes to me freely from every direction. You write a little sticky note and you put it around your house everywhere because unconsciously you are reading it. But consciously you decided what you were going to read. You didn't lose sound. I'm just giving you a minute to think about it. So when you read that story the next time with how Jacob, and here's the kicker, Jacob's flock outgrew Laban's. Oh, what does that mean? Laban was the old man, the old perception. Jacob is the new perception. Because look at it. Laban said, oh, spotted means weak. That was his old way of thinking. But Jacob, the new way of thinking, you see what he changed? He changed the way he thought about things. He said, spotted doesn't mean weak. So he selected the strong and the sturdy livestock. What's that represent? What you want to bring about in the world. He wanted abundance. So he took what was in the world, what he deemed to be strong, and he put the spots in front of their eyes so that they would reproduce spots. And they reproduced so much. Laban got to the point where he said, look, take your wives and your children and go, because I don't have room for you. So he outgrew what he once was. He outgrew his old way of thinking, his lack mentality, his scarcity mentality. He outgrew that, which was Laban. And he became abundant because he chose. Remember, the brain, the subconscious mind, just simply takes in information. So he decided what information he was going to put in it, because he knew its nature. He says, well, look, this thing, they're sheep. They just take it in. They don't discern. They just take it in. And so he gave himself what he was just going to take in. So you see, we have to deliberately decide what we are going to take in. So you put it everywhere you want to put it, because you're seeing it. This is why a vision board works, not because you're cutting out pictures. But the vision board works because you are choosing what it is you want to impress upon your mind. So that's what he did. That's what the spots represent. So are you changing yourself, or are you just simply adopting a new way of doing things? Adopt a new way of doing things, because the self will always remain the same. The self is just simply awareness. It is aware of, oh, look, I am here. Oh, look, it is Tuesday. The self is aware that it is Tuesday. So it's not the self, it's what the self is aware of. So this morning, I trust that this makes sense to you. I trust that it makes sense to you. You be the one to decide what is helpful or harmful to you. But it is based on your desire. Huh? Well, why do you think Jacob acted in the fashion that he did? Because, listen, I don't know. The story is a fun story, though, because he fell in love with Rachel. And Laban said to him, work for me for 7 years, and I'll give you Rachel. So he did everything that Laban asked him to do. And then when it came time, now it was dark. Yeah. And Laban said to his other daughter, Leah, because she was the elder, he said, go in. It's dark. He won't know. And Jacob, of course, consummated this marriage. And when he woke up in the morning, he got quite a fright, because the way it was described, the way Leah was described, is that she was dim of eyes. In other words, she was the ugly sister. So sometimes we end up getting things, we work so hard and we get something and we're like, that's not what I wanted. But you got it. So you got to make the best of it. You got to make the best of it. So what did he do? Laban said, well, you got to work another 7 years. And he worked 14 years. But look at it. 12 sons. You see how he multiplied? So he did not grudge the fact. He just said, fine. And he made the best of his situation and still came out abundant. What's that telling you? Even though you may end up with something that you not quite fond of having, it's all right. You can still make it abundant. Well, how so? You can make it abundant by choosing to look at abundance instead of looking in the direction of complaining. Now, we could go on with that story, but I won't. It really is a fun story. I had a great time with that story as a kid. My grandfather taught it to me. But at the time, as a child, I had no idea what symbolism was. But now I have a little bit, just a wee bit more of an understanding, of a comprehension. So this day, remember, right now, if you're struggling, you're Laban. You're Laban right now. You're struggling. Become Jacob. Well, how do you become Jacob? You become creative. You change. You look at your situation, which is what he did. He was told you can have the weak and the sickly. And he said, well, that's what you think. He refused to accept that foolishness. He said, no, but I become what I see. I become what I give my attention to. So he gave himself fully to what he wanted to give attention to. And that's how he multiplied. So where are you putting your attention? Complaining that you got the wrong girl? Complaining that you're living the wrong life? You should have had a better life? Is that where you're going to look? Or will you start to see your ideal life? Remember, the subconscious mind is akin to what? It just takes in the information. It just does what you tell it to do. So if it just does what you tell it to do, then you have to decide what to tell it. Are you going to tell it complaining, or are you going to tell it abundance? Which one are you going to tell it? Because all it's going to do is take in the information and give it back to you. It is the great womb of life. It pertains to the law of gender. You have an idea and you project it outward, which is masculine. But where does it go? There's not nothingness out there. It's a womb. You might not be able to see it, but it is there. Because your experience has to come out from somewhere. You projected the idea for what you want to experience, right? Your ideal life. Freedom. Lots of love in your life. Great friendships. Lots of financial abundance in your life. You just peace of mind in your life. That's what you want your life to look like. See the whole picture of your life so that when someone is talking to you or about you, they will say, well, this was their life. Not that they were rich. That's just only an aspect of your life. A tiny piece. What will your grandchildren say as they sit on your knee and say, oh my God, grandma, grandpa, my mom told me that you were this and you were that and you had such a great life. But you want to tell a story with your life. So become Jacob and tell a glorious story. Tell a glorious story about what your life is like, what you want it to be like. And the more you tell that story, because it tells you after the 14 years of telling that story, of giving those animals the spots to look at, he far outnumbered Laban. So it's not that it took 14 years and then bam, he had it. No, it built every single day. Every day he told the story. Every day he showed them the spots. They were, come lambing season, listen, they had to procreate. So it's not that he waited 14 years and then bam, there it was. Every moment they saw the spots. They saw the spots. They saw the spots. And when they were breeding, They saw the spots. They saw the spots. They had their lambs. They were spotted. He did it for 14 years. What is that telling you? It's telling you you must do what? Persevere. Persevere in the story that you tell yourself because you may not see it in the beginning. He had no evidence until after the first lamb was born. But if you do not continue and get your lambs, your ewes and your rams together, your idea and the womb together, so it can give you an experience. If you don't do that, how will you see the evidence? So that 14 years is telling you to persist. It's not 14 years as, oh my God, this is going to take forever. No, it is the reminder to persist in the story that you tell yourself day in and day out. And you'll begin to see the evidence. Man, you'll see the evidence of your little lambs. You'll see the evidence of the changes in your life. But you must persist. You must persist. So today, do you change or do you adopt a new way? Adopt a new way by turning your back on the old and embracing the new. Because where you put your attention is what you will experience. Let us take a moment now, shall we, to welcome everyone into the space. You are new to me, dearest. Ah, Nicole. Hey, Hilarion. Feta Paso. Hi. My Twitter Shay is here. And last ago, you're here too on Twitter. It is always beautiful to see all of you here. It really is. I don't know who's on Facebook this morning, but I know who's on YouTube. Asanya. Hello, Rachel, darling. And for the others who've not made yourselves known in the chat, I see you. Yeah, I see you. Who's here on Fanbase this morning? Joaquim is here. Oracle Treehouse, Moon, Flo Smiles. Ali is here. Miss McQueen, Miss Fawn. Hello, darling, darling. Miss Ange and Dudu Sirek is here. Welcome to each and every one of you this lovely day. I trust that the next time you come across the story of Jacob and you read it, you'll see he had a particular pattern. Jacob represents persistence. Oh, how can I say such a thing? Well, he persisted for Rachel and Leah, but he also fought with the angel. I will not let you go until you bless me. That simply, he wrestled with the angel till daybreak, and the angel was like, dude, if you gonna defeat me if you don't let me go. And he put his hip out. But again, it's the story. It represents what? Persistence. So Jacob is the attitude or the mindset or the mood or the mental state of persistence. There you have it. So this lovely Tuesday, as I look out the window and I see the sunrise over there, well, it's not really rising, we're turning towards it, but I digress. What will you persevere in? What will you persevere in? This morning when you hear the bowl and possible bird song, what mental attitude will you persevere in? If you're tired of persevering in the old way, choose a new way. When you hear the bowl and bird song this morning, choose a new thing to persevere in, to be persistent in. And of course, sometimes we get a little impatient. We just want it now. But persevere. You already have it now. The moment you turn your attention to it, it's yours. Persevere till you see the evidence. on the outside. You have the evidence on the inside. Remember, he had the spots. And it took time for them to mate. Which tells you what? You've got to become mentally impregnated by the desire, meaning it consumes you and crowds everything else out of your mind, leaving only that. That is the only thing that has your 100% attention. It has all your attention. You are focused. You are not divided and scattered, a piece of you here and a piece of you there, and then, oh, look yonder. No, you are focused in one place, singular focus. So, what will you persevere in? What singular focus will you attune yourself to? Choose it this morning when you hear the bull and bird song. Just choose it. It's as simple as that. But we in a hurry. Daddy says when you rush the brush, you waste the paint. So take your time. Take your time. Because what are you doing when you take your time? Do you think you're just la-di-dee-dee-dee? No. When you are taking your time. Now, let's tell another story before we get the bowl. So that when you hear the bowl and you begin to take your time, you will recognize why you take your time. Do you want to be with a lover who rushes through the lovemaking process? Or do you want to be with someone who takes their time and allows you to feel every facet of the experience? Oh, I think I know what you want. So then, as you hear the bull and bird song this morning, allow yourself to feel every facet of where you are now putting your attention. Because you will feel it. And it becomes more and more intense until it cannot become any more intense. Right? You understand what I'm saying? You're picking up what I'm laying down. I got to be cautious if they're wee children. I don't know. But take your time. And when you decide what you will give your 100% to, allow it. Neville says, allow the thrill to saturate you. So here's the bowl. Let's get it. Countdown initiated. 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you all for being here on this lovely, lovely Tuesday. Go forth and choose what you will give 100% of your attention to, and persist because you love it. Persist because you love it. Remember, Rachel had to be beautiful to get his attention. Your desire is beautiful and it has your attention. Persist in loving it and allow it to permeate every facet of your being. Much love to each and every one of you today. Much, much love. Child, you will hurt yourself.